The most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered not for war or treaty, but for an execution. They called it justice. They called her a plague. Ilara, the last human, stood on the polished obsidian floor, her hands bound not with chains, but with bands of silent light. The Galactic Council, a shimmering array of crystalline entities, gaseous intelligences, and armored insectoid monarchs, had reached a unanimous verdict: humanity's final spark must be extinguished. Their crime? An existential one, a soul too loud, a heart too wild, a spirit that refused to be catalogued and quieted. They feared what they could not understand. But their justice was not mere death. It was ritual. It was sacrifice. To cement their dominance and appease the ancient, unfathomable power that slumbered at the heart of their civilization, they would offer her life to the Draconis Somnium, the dreaming dragon. A creature of myth and nightmare, older than stars, who slept in a chamber below the council spire and was said to devour the essence of the sacrificed. They believed it would consume her, and, with her, the last echo of humanity's troublesome song. Ilara did not beg. She did not weep. As the blade of pure energy descended, her lips were curved in the faintest, most unsettling of smiles. She whispered two words lost in the hum of the weapon: "Wake up." The blade fell. There was a silence deeper than the void. And, then, from the planetary core, came an answer. It was not a roar, but a sound like a mountain sighing, a galaxy stretching. The offering had been accepted. But the dragon did not consume. It listened. And what it heard in the silent echo of a human girl's last thought changed everything forever. Part 1. The Grand Conclave Chamber was a monument to cold order. Light did not shine here, it was permitted, filtered through prisms that broke it into sterile, colorless beams. The air was still, recycled through 1,000 molecular scrubbers until not a scent, not a passion, remained. In the center of this cathedral of control, Ilara looked absurdly, painfully alive. Her hair was a messy brown against the gleaming floors, her simple shipsuit stained from recapture. Her eyes, a green that seemed to hold forgotten forests, tracked the council members as they pronounced her species' epitaph. The Chancellor, a being of shifting liquid metal, pulsed with cold light as it spoke. The human contagion of emotion, of irrationality, of chaotic ambition, ends here. Your history is a testament to beautiful failure. You burned your own world for fleeting progress. You loved so deeply it bred hate. You dreamed of stars but carried your flaws with you. We cannot allow such a volatile template to persist. The galaxy has achieved peace through harmony, through the suppression of such noise. Ilara's voice, when she finally used it, was clear and carried a warmth that seemed to make the crystalline observers vibrate with discomfort. You have harmony, she said, her gaze sweeping the assembly. But do you have joy? You have peace. But do you have wonder? You remove the storms and call the Dead Sea that remains perfection. Her defiance was a nuisance, a last flicker of a candle before snuffing. The ritual demanded the sacrifice be conscious, aware, so its life force was vibrant for the Draconis. They led her to the offering pit, a circular shaft that plunged into absolute darkness at the chamber's heart. A beam of hard light solidified into a blade above her neck. The council watched, sensors ready to record the absorption of her biosignature by the entity below. As the blade activated, Ilara didn't look at her executioners. She looked into the pit. And she smiled. In the final microsecond, she didn't think of hate or fear. She thought of the feeling of sun on skin, of a sad song that makes you feel less alone, of the stupid, stubborn hope that makes you plant a seed in barren soil. She thought, with a clarity that was like a laser beam, they have forgotten what it means to be alive. Do you remember? The blade cut. Her body fell. The silent chamber waited for the Draconis to feed. A tremor, faint at first, then, a deep, subsonic vibration that resonated in every molecule of the spire. The pit, which had never been anything but a silent maw, began to glow. Not with the cold light of the council, but with a soft, pulsing, copper-tinged radiance. A warmth, the first true warmth this sterile place had ever known, washed over the chamber. The council's sensors went wild, not detecting consumption, but an eruption of impossible data, a psychic echo, expanding, not diminishing. From the pit, a tendril of that coppery light, insubstantial as mist yet dense as a nebula, rose. It coiled gently around Ilara's fallen form, cradling it. And, then, a voice spoke. It was not a sound heard by ears, but a meaning etched directly into the consciousness of every being present. It was vast, ancient, and thick with the dust of epochs, yet now, trembling with a newfound, fragile emotion. I remember. The single thought sentence shattered the council's composed silence into a chaos of alarmed chirps and flashing lights. The dragon was not supposed to think. It was supposed to feed and sleep. The light receded, pulling Ilara's body into the depths. The chamber was left colder than before, the council members staring into a pit that now hummed with a gentle, terrifying power. The sacrifice was gone. But the ritual, they realized with a dread that seeped into their very cores, had not ended. It had just begun. Part 2. Deep below the council spire, in a cavern that was not a physical space but a pocket dimension folded into reality, the Draconis somnium stirred. For millennia, it had slumbered, a cosmic leviathan feeding on the lukewarm essence of sacrificed criminals and political prisoners, empty calories of existence that barely sustained its endless dream. It dreamed of ancient fires, of starforges, of a time when the universe was young and rang with the songs of 1,000 wild, nascent species. The offerings of the council were like ashes on its tongue, the fading echoes of beings already spiritually dead, their uniqueness polished away by galactic conformity. Ilara's essence was different. It was a supernova in a gray sky. Her final moment was not a whimper of fear, but a focused broadcast of pure, defiant experience. It was the taste of rain, the ache of a remembered lullaby, the fierce, illogical warmth of solidarity, the brilliant, chaotic colors of hope and despair intertwined. It was a memory of living, raw and unprocessed. It struck the dragon's slumbering mind like a lightning bolt. In its cavern, reality itself bent. The gray, abstract void began to morph. Patches of color bloomed, the impossible blue of an earth sky, the stark white of snow on a pine branch, the vibrant gold of a field of wheat. Scents manifested, ozone after a storm, turned earth, baking bread. Sounds echoed, not the hum of engines, but the crackle of fire, the whisper of wind, the rhythm of a human heartbeat. The dragon itself began to change. Its form, once a shadowy outline of immense wings and coils, solidified. Scales the color of old copper and burnished emerald gleamed in the light of a phantom sun. Its eyes, vast as lakes, opened. They were no longer orbs of dull void, but held swirling galaxies and, deep within, a new, fiery spark of cognizant curiosity. Cradled before it, Ilara's physical body lay, head beside it. But, above it, shimmering like a heat haze, was herself, her consciousness, intact, vibrant, and bewildered. You are unfinished, the dragon's thought voice rumbled, not with malice, but with the awe of a scholar discovering a lost masterpiece. A song cut off mid-note. A story without an ending. Why? Ilara's spirit form looked at her own body, then, at the colossal being. There was no fear. In death, she felt more alive than the entire council above. They were afraid of the song, she replied, her thoughts clear as bells. They want the universe to be a silent, tidy room. The dragon exhaled, and the breath was a warm wind that carried the scent of autumn leaves. I have slept so long, fed on silence. Your memory, it is a key. It unlocks my own. The cavern shimmered, and, for a moment, Ilara saw not the dragon, but something else, a being of light, helping lesser species kindle their first fires, singing to them the songs of cosmic creation, weeping when they inevitably stumbled. The dragon was not a god. It was a gardener. And it had fallen asleep, letting its garden become overgrown with sterile, plastic flowers. Above, the council was in pandemonium. Their sensors showed the dragon's energy signature not diminishing, but evolving, complexifying. The pit was now emitting low-level radiation that was rewriting the very information code of the spire's lower levels. Cold, logical systems were experiencing glitches, security doors developed a preference for who they let through, cleaning drones started arranging dust into intricate patterns, the omnipresent sterile lights developed a warm, gentle glow. The Chancellor, faced with this heresy against order, made a fatal decision. The Draconis was clearly malfunctioning, corrupted by the human plague. It had to be purged. They mobilized the Galactic peacekeeping fleet, a silent armada of disc-like ships, and aimed the Spire's own planetary disruptors, weapons designed to shatter continents, into the pit. They would scorch the Cancer out. As the disruptors charged, casting an angry red glare over the chamber, the dragon looked up, as if through layers of rock and dimension. Its new eyes narrowed. They wished to prune the gardener, it mused to Ilara. They have forgotten their roots. We must remind them. How? Ilara asked, her spirit glowing brighter, fueled by a righteous anger. The dragon's coppery wings, now solid and real, stretched for the first time in eons. We will show them a memory. Not yours. Not mine. Theirs. Part 3. The Galactic Council's armada hovered like a swarm of silver locusts. The planetary disruptors hummed at critical frequency, aimed at the Spire's base. The Chancellor gave the order. A beam of annihilating energy, capable of boiling oceans, lanced down into the offering pit. It did not explode. It was caught. A shield of coppery light, shimmering with images of towering forests and deep oceans, erupted from the pit's mouth, swallowing the destructive beam. The light then did something impossible. It bent, twisted, and reflected back upwards, not as a weapon, but as a wave of pure, empathic information. This wave washed over the Chancellor, the Council, the fleet commanders, every citizen in the linked networks of their homeworlds. It was not an attack. It was a gift. A memory. They saw their own ancestors. Not as the perfected, logical beings of their historical records, but as they truly were. The crystalline HFY were seen as volatile geothermal children, singing shattering songs to shape their first gems, their emotions as brilliant and fractious as their forming bodies. The gaseous veil were witnessed as wild solar storms, discovering consciousness in the joyful, terrifying chaos of fusion. The insectoid cricks saw their progenitor queen, not as a flawless architect, but as a passionate artist, building her first hive mound in a fit of desperate, beautiful love for her offspring. They felt the raw, unedited emotions, the glorious uncertainty, the creative panic, the bittersweet joy of early, flawed existence. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was alive. And they had spent millennia surgically removing it from themselves, calling the resulting numbness peace. The effect was catastrophic to their order. A HFY counselor, experiencing the forgotten thrill of its people's foundational song, suddenly vibrated at a frequency that cracked its polished facet, a sound of heartbreaking beauty escaping it. A veil intelligence, feeling the ghost of solar wind, wept clouds of iridescent mist. On 1,000 worlds, individuals stopped, overwhelmed by a longing for something they never knew they'd lost. The armada faltered. Weapons systems powered down, not by command, but by the operator's sudden, visceral aversion to destroying the source of this feeling. The Chancellor, its liquid metal form boiling with conflicting data, screamed against the intrusion. It is a trick. A human virus. Purge the data stream. Reinforce logical protocols. But it was too late. The dragon, with Ilara's consciousness as a catalyst, had not attacked their defenses. It had bypassed them entirely, speaking directly to the buried souls within the shells. Below, the dragon spoke to Ilara. They are like seeds locked in a vault. The shell is hard, but the potential inside is still there. It needs only heat. And water. What's the water? Ilara asked, watching the chaos of awakening above through the dragon's psychic link. Story, the dragon replied simply. Your story. The unfinished one. The coppery light from the pit intensified, forming a pillar that reached into the sky. Within that light, images formed, visible to all. They saw Ilara's life, not the Council's clinical dossier, but her life. A child laughing under a yellow sun, crying over a scraped knee, feeling the awe of her first spacewalk, the grief of losing her family to a deep space accident, the stubborn determination to keep going, to keep feeling, even when the universe seemed cold. They felt her loneliness as the last of her kind, a loneliness not of emptiness, but of a song with no one left to hear it. It was not a grand tale of heroes and victories. It was a small, human story. And it was the most compelling thing the galaxy had witnessed in 1,000 generations. It had color where they had gray. It had texture where they had smoothness. It had a heart that beat where there's only hummed. The Chancellor, fighting a desperate internal war, made a last, drastic move. It severed the main power to the spire's lower levels, initiating a physical collapse. If it could not kill the dragon with weapons, it would bury it. The Great Spire, symbol of galactic order, began to crumble into itself, megatons of alloy and crystal plunging towards the pit. The dragon looked up, and, for the first time, its expression was not curiosity or remembrance, but something like gentle pity. They still believe this is about physical space. With a thought, it unfolded the pocket dimension of its cavern. The collapsing spire did not fall on it. It fell into it. The cavern expanded, swallowing the ruin, not into destruction, but into the realm of memory and story. The rubble became mountains. The shattered crystal formed glittering rivers. The dying lights of the council chamber became a firmament of soft, new stars. On the now barren surface, the council and the remnants of their fleet stood on a plain of dust, surrounded by the silent, witnessing galaxy. The power was gone. The order was broken. And, from the now gargantuan, beautiful cavern that glowed like a second sun in the planet's side, the dragon emerged, not to destroy, but to perch on the edge. And, beside it, woven from light and memory and the dragon's own power, stood Ilara, whole, tangible, and alive. Part 4. A profound silence blanketed the world. The dust of the fallen spire settled like a shroud over the paralyzed remnants of galactic authority. Before them, the reality they had built, a reality of impeccable control, sterile harmony, and predictable futures, lay in literal ruins. And, before the ruins stood the impossible, the Draconis Somnium, fully awake and radiant, and, beside it, the human girl who was supposed to be a forgotten sacrifice, now reconstructed from dreamstuff and will, her form shimmering with a gentle, internal light. Ilara looked at her hands, solid yet not quite flesh, feeling the ghost of a heartbeat that was now a synchronized rhythm with the dragon's own immense, slow pulse. She was alive, but not as she was. She was a story given form, a memory made manifest. The dragon's voice resonated in her mind, quieter now, a shared thought. The shell is cracked. Now, we must show the seed there is no fear in the open air. The Chancellor, its liquid metal form struggling to hold cohesion, broadcast a furious signal to the remaining fleet. You see. It is an abomination. A perversion of natural law. Destroy it. Destroy them both. But, the command sparked no coordinated action. The ships hung in the sky, their crews mesmerized and conflicted, the empathic memory waves still echoing in their hearts. They had seen their own forgotten beauty. The human story had stirred something ancient and hungry within them. The Chancellor's logic now sounded like the rasp of a dead thing. The dragon did not address the fleet. It turned one great, galaxy swirl light towards the gathered council members, who were now just individuals, stripped of their grand chamber and unified authority. Its voice, when it spoke to them, was not a psychic blast, but a whisper that carried the weight of epics. You sought to perfect the garden by pulling up all the flowers whose colors you deemed too bright, whose scents you called too strong. You left only the gray grass and called it peace. You offered me their trimmed, scentless stems and wondered why I slept. It gestured with a wingtip, encompassing Ilara. She was not a weed. She was a rose. And her thorns were part of her beauty. You could not see it. You had forgotten how to see. Then, the dragon did something simple and profound. It lowered its colossal head until its snout was level with the dusty plain before the shattered council. It breathed out. This was not the warm wind of before, but a breath of concentrated possibility. Where the dust settled, life erupted. Not the engineered, efficient flora of their worlds, but wild, untamed life. Grass of impossible green, dotted with flowers in chaotic, clashing colors, burst forth. Vines with thorns and heavy, fragrant blossoms snaked over broken metal. The air filled with the hum of phantom insects and the scent of rain and pollen. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was alive in a way that their meticulously planned ecosystems never were. Ilara stepped forward, her feet leaving faint traces of light on the new grass. She spoke, and her voice, amplified by the dragon's power, carried not as a command, but as an invitation. You were afraid of feeling because feeling hurts. You were afraid of dreams because dreams can be broken. But a song isn't worse because it ends. A story isn't worthless because it has sadness. She looked at the shy ADH counselor, its crystal still cracked from its own emergent song. Your ancestors' first song shattered mountains. Don't you want to hear it again, even if it cracks you? She looked to the weeping veil intelligence. You were born in a storm. Is calm truly all you want? One by one, beings began to step forward, not the leaders, but the lesser aides, the soldiers, the thinkers who had always harbored a silent, heretical wonder. A Krix warrior, its carapace polished to a dull uniformity, approached a wild, thorny vine. With a claw tip, it carefully touched a flower, then flinched as the thorn pricked it. A drop of its own ichor, a color it had never seen in its regulated body, welled up. It stared at the vivid blue drop, not with pain, but with fascination. The Chancellor watched its order unravel not through violence, but through inspiration. Its form writhed. This is anarchy. This is regression. We have laws. We have 1,000 millennia of progress. The dragon's head swung towards it. You have 1,000 millennia of sleep. You built a cage and called it a cradle. The child has grown. The door is open. The dragon's gaze held the Chancellor. You most of all have forgotten. You were not always liquid metal. You were molten rock, fresh from a star's heart, passionate and malleable. You have cooled into a rigid shape. Let yourself feel the heat again. A shudder went through the Chancellor. Its perfect, reflective surface began to ripple. Colors, real, hot, volcanic colors, swirled beneath its skin. It was fighting, but it was fighting itself, trying to suppress the memory of its own fiery birth. With a sound like a glacier breaking, a fissure opened in its form. Not a crack of damage, but an opening. And, from it, a warmth, a genuine radiant heat, emanated for the first time. The control was broken. The spell of enforced harmony was lifted. The galaxy held its breath, teetering on the brink of a new, terrifying, and wonderful dawn. Part 5. The world, once the seat of sterile power, was transforming. The dragon's breath of life spread from the plain, a verdant tide of untamed ecology reclaiming the metal and crystal dust. It was not a restoration, but a renaissance, a new thing, born of memory and desire. The sky, once a predictable tableau of controlled weather, now swirled with clouds that painted themselves in sunset hues at noon. A gentle, natural rain began to fall, washing the dust from the shells of the stunned observers and watering the newborn wildflowers. The change, as it would later be called, was not an instantaneous, galactic revolution. It was a seed planted in the heart of a civilization. The council was not overthrown, it was rendered obsolete. Its members stood amidst the growing grass, each grappling with their own awakening. The shy ADH counselor was now humming its foundational song, the cracks in its facets spreading in intricate, luminous patterns. The veil intelligence had condensed into a small, personal storm, flickering with internal lightning of emotion. The Krix queen was carefully planting a thornflower in the joint of her armor. The Chancellor had ceased to be a single entity. The internal struggle had been too great. Its liquid metal form had split, not into pieces, but into a dozen smaller, mercurial shapes that now danced and flowed around each other, each a distinct hue of volcanic orange, deep gold, and molten brass. They were no longer a Chancellor, but a choir of first fire, chattering with excited, rediscovered heat. Ilara watched, a silent anchor in the storm of becoming. She was the catalyst, but this was no longer just her story. The dragon, perched like a benevolent, living mountain, observed its garden begin to truly grow for the first time in eons. They will be messy now, it thought to her, a note of deep satisfaction in its mental voice. They will fight. They will love foolishly. They will create terrible and wonderful things. They will be alive. The remnants of the fleet landed, not in military formation, but, where they could, crews spilling out to feel real earth under their feet, to smell unfiltered air. Artists, poets, musicians, and philosophers, roles that had become archaic, suppressed functions in the old order, found their voices first. A veil composer tried to capture the sound of the wind in the new grass, producing a haunting, wordless melody that made others feel a sweet ache. Crix, using its sharp claws, began to carve not efficient data, but expressive, jagged shapes into a piece of fallen spire alloy. News, real news full of wonder and confusion, not curated bulletins, spread through the galactic networks. The images were not of the execution, but of the awakening, the dragon on the world, the human girl of light, the crying counselors and the dancing flames. On 1,000 worlds, individuals felt the same stirring. A mechanic on an industrial planet looked at the flawless machine she was servicing and, for the first time, thought it was ugly. She painted a flawed, lopsided flower on its casing. It was an act of rebellion that felt like a homecoming. Ilara knew her role was changing. She was the last human, but she was no longer an end. She was a beginning. The dragon confirmed it. Your physical form is gone, little flame. But your story is now part of the story of all things. You cannot stay as you are. Nor can I. We have woken the garden. The gardener must step back, lest his shadow stifle the sun. She understood. The reconstruction of her body from light and memory was a bridge, not a destination. She looked at the dragon, this ancient, lonely being who had remembered itself through her. What will you do? Dream again, it said, its eyes softening. But not the sleep of forgetting. I will dream the future. I will weave the dreams of all these newly awakened souls into the fabric of what comes next. I will be a voice in the wind, a hint of copper in a sunset, a sudden, strange idea in a thinker's mind. And you, it turned its gaze fully upon her. You will walk among them. Not as a ghost, and not as a human. As an echo. A reminder. You will be the feeling of déjà vu when someone creates something beautiful. You will be the courage in the heart of someone about to do a foolish, brave thing. You will be the comfort in a moment of loneliness, the spark of an idea that seems to come from nowhere. You will be the humanity in humanity, fuck yeah, not as a species, but as a spirit. A spirit of resilience, of messy emotion, of stubborn, beautiful hope. Ilara felt no sadness, only a profound peace. Her story wasn't ending, it was becoming a genre. She nodded. Her luminous form began to diffuse, not fading, but spreading. The light that composed her drifted outwards, a million particles of glowing memory, and settled upon the awakening galaxy like a gentle dew. A Crix child felt it as a sudden urge to draw instead of calculate. A weary sci-fi artisan felt it as a second wind to finish a flawed, passionate piece. A lonely Veil scout on the rim felt it as the certainty that someone, somewhere, understood. The dragon, its work complete, folded its magnificent wings. Its physical form too began to dissolve, not into nothing, but into the world it had helped heal. Its body became the new, copper-colored mountains rising in the distance. Its scales shimmered into the leaves of the strange, metallan, organic trees now sprouting. Its final, warm breath became the permanent, gentle climate of the transformed world, which would later be known as Cradle. On the plain, where it all began, a single, perfect rose grew from a crack in the old offering pit's rim. Its petals were the color of old copper and deep space, and its thorns were sharp and clear as diamond. It bloomed under a wild, untamed sun. And, in the quiet moments, when the wind rustled its leaves, those who listened closely swore they could hear two things: the deep, contented rumble of a dreaming dragon, and the faint, joyful echo of a human laugh. The garden was awake. And it was growing, wonderfully, messily, and alive.